I would like to apologise for my son being a pain in the bum during the making of this episode. What a perfect day to watch this episode. Look, we've even got snow. And it's freaking March. Well, we've got a little bit of snow anyway. And now to watch episode 8 out of 9. What? Hang on. What? So I think Now TV made a little bit of a mistake there. But I kind of got my hopes up. I thought there'd be an extra episode. Maybe there's a secret one we didn't know about coming. But sadly, that's it. So I'm currently sitting on the floor with my son. You can see his head there. It's kind of the only time this week I'm going to be able to do this, so it's going to be a bit crazy. If he starts getting a bit loud or whatever, I'll have to keep stopping the video. Yes, I know you're drawing. It's a very nice brown pencil. Yeah, you do it because Daddy can't keep doing it. There you go. Oh, look at that. Oh. So, yeah, so let's just get on to The Last of Us and hope he lets me continue this conversation. So we start off with David. Now, if you play the games, you instantly know who David is. He's one of the most horrible, vile characters in the game. And obviously, at the start of this episode, you can see David in a different light. You think he's actually quite a nice guy. He comes across quite caring and considerate for his community. Now, you see him doing some like sermon preacher thing, and you see a girl crying. David sort of like comforts her and like says like about how her dad's just recently been killed. And then the girl says, "Can we bury him?" Now, then David looks at her and says, "No, because the ground's too cold. We're going to have to wait to the spring." Later, we find out what that leads to. So, you then see like David and a character called James, who's actually played by the person who voiced Joel in the game, which was a really cool little, not really a cameo, but really cool acting role for them to give him. Obviously, like, it's kind of a meaningful role actually. So he's talking to James about the medicine situation, that they're running very low on food and even lower on medicine, so it's kind of getting a bit dire at this point. They mention that they need to go hunting, that they found some deer walking around locally. They spotted some deer. That's my son playing piano, by the way. They spotted some deer walking around recently. So, sorry about that. Oh my god, here he comes like Godzilla. He's sitting there. So yeah, so they've recently found some deer. They're going to go hunting for it. Now we go back to seeing Ellie and Joel still held up in that little cabin they were in the previous episode before the flashback. And I've lost my bit. Yeah, so basically Ellie's now realising that she's running out of food as well, and Joel is in dire need of medicine because the wound he's got is kind of infected. He's laying in bed, he's all shivery and cold. He's not really doing much at the minute. Ellie's been basically looking after him for what seems to be a few weeks while he's been ill and recovering from the stab wound he got in the last one. But obviously the infection is starting to take hold. Can I have my book back? I'm going to draw on it, alright. We're trying to do that notes now, look. I'll tell you what, if I take this page out for a second, you can have that. There you go. So, got a page. So, where are we? So, yeah, so Ellie then goes out hunting and she first misses a rabbit, but then she finds a deer and manages to shoot the deer. But the deer obviously gets shot, but keeps running, goes off. So Ellie then follows it, following up the trail of blood and footsteps and that. But David and James find the deer dead first, before Ellie gets to find it. So they're discussing whether or not she just take it where the hunter is that shot it and all that sort of stuff. As they do that, Ellie comes up behind with a gun and basically holds them up and says, "Look, don't move." David sort of starts his like sweet talking way. He's got very charm, sort of goes on like a charm offensive with Ellie, starts talking to her. And she says, he says, we can do some trading. And Ellie instantly says, "Meds. Have you got meds?" And James is obviously looking at David like they've just mentioned the fact they don't have a lot of meds. They can't be just giving them away. David just tells James to go and get meds, like go get 2 bottles of antibiotics and a syringe. And James is obviously very hesitant at this, but like he does what David tells him because David's got like a hold over this community. It's almost like a David Koresh sort of like cult style hold, like a Charles Manson style hold over this community. And he's literally does what he's ordered to do. So James then goes away, leaving Ellie still holding a gun at David. And then they decide to go inside for shelter, and Ellie makes sure David drags the deer in with him to the shelter. Which, to be honest, that deer looked blinking heavy. That deer looked really heavy, and I don't know how David pulled that thing into the shed because he didn't look like a big bloke either. So that would have been a feat in itself. So they're in there. then we see Ellie and David in the shelter. It's like an old barn thing. They've got a fire in there, and they start talking. David talks about how he became religious and how he believes everything happens for a reason. Ellie's like, well, prove it. And then he tells the story of how they sent foremen out looking for supplies. They come across a man and his daughter, and the man killed one of the men. And he knows it's Ellie and her dad. So instantly he knows this. Ellie now knows that he knows. And as he says, see, everything happens for a reason. Quite a really nasty sort of evil way. Really sort of good acting on that point. It really gives you sort of almost a terrifying way of saying it. He says, James, put the gun down. And James is behind Ellie with a gun aimed at her. Ellie spins around with her gun. They sort of stand off on each other for a minute. And David says, James, put the gun down. Give her the medicine. We're going to go. With that, those two leave. James is very sort of apprehensive at doing this. He's just like, what? Like, but David's like, do what I say. So he does, because obviously he's following his leader. And those two leave. Ellie then runs back to Joel with the medicine. Well, sorry, they don't leave. Sorry, Ellie then leaves, runs back to Joel with the medicine, gives him the medicine, and it starts to like it's quite funny because she basically stabs him in the wound. Which I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything. I don't know how it works, but I thought they just inject it into any vein that can get into. But she stabs it straight into that wound, and I'm not sure if that would like leak some medicine out. I don't know, but she basically gives him the medicine, not really knowing what she's doing. She does what she thinks is the best thing to do. And Joel takes it, and then we sort of see them. She then cuddles up to Joel. She's really sweet. She sort of does this whole thing where she sort of like lays with him, and I thought that was really sort of kind of sweet. So then they return back to the village. You see like David and James back at the village, and they go in with the deer. Although there is a scene just before that where they're in a kitchen, and it's quite a weird thing, because obviously I know what's coming because of the game. But they go in the kitchen, and then you see the people of the village like cooking up their food like it's like a stew. And then this man comes in with a tray of meat, and the woman says to him, who's actually the wife of the guy that Joel killed, the woman says to him, like, what meat is this? And the guy sort of looks at her in a funny way and just goes, venison, like really quickly. And she's like, okay, but she doesn't seem sure about it either. But the meat goes in the stew, and they all start making the stew for everyone to eat. While they're sort of serving the stew up to everyone, James and David then come back in. And with the deer that Ellie's obviously let them take. So then like, obviously, James has told the people of the town when he went back for the medicine that they found the girl and the dad that killed the guy that lived with them. So the daughter then, like, obviously David addresses the rumour of this and says, yes, we have found them, we are going to go look for them, we're going to decide what to do. And the daughter says, kill them, kill both of them. With that, David, out of the characters that we've seen him so far, just backhand slaps this young girl. It's like young teenage girl, probably about like 12, 13, she's only as Ellie, like 13-year-old. And he just backhand slaps her and she falls to the floor. And then he picks her up and basically says to her, like, your daddy's dead, but you still have a father, and basically saying he's her dad now, and it's really creepy. The son changing this character is really creepy. So then they sit down and they start eating like really fast. There's a couple of like dodgy eating scenes where they're sort of eating really quickly, and James sort of looks at the daughter and smiles. And as we'll get to in a minute, we find out why. I'm going to try and hark back to this in a minute. Oh no, I'm going to give it to you. Hang on. I'm just trying to get my pages out before you. Right, there you go. So yeah, let's sort of hark back to that. Like, we'll go back to that later. So Ellie's then, you see Ellie back the next morning injecting Joel again. Joel seems to be sort of coming out of it, which means this medicine is the best medicine ever. They must have invented the greatest antibiotic in the world just before the cordyceps pandemic happened. So he's already starting to sort of come to a bit more. Sorry, my son is now up to no good. So yeah, he's starting to come to a bit more. Ellie then goes outside to sort of feed the horse some water that she's melted down with some snow to feed the horse. And as she's walking around, suddenly sees these crows fly up in the air. And that's obviously alerted her that something is coming. So she's sort of ducking down and have a look. And then she sees the so I can hear this tablet going. She sees the men from the village along with David and James coming. And whoa, he's gone up the camera over. You want to do some drawing for me? And you sit here with me and do some drawing, come on. Yeah, so she sees them coming and she sort of runs back into Joel says to him like, Joel, you need to stay awake. You need to be ready. If someone comes down, you got to kill them. I'm going to try and lead them away. She then like traps down, so she shuts the door and puts like a wardrobe like cabinet thing in front. It's like a cabinet, one of these like fancy cabinet things in front of the door. And then she leaves. And she gets on the horse. Yes. Oh, you want this back on? Oh God, you have to put this back on. She then leaves with the horse, and she does a runner. Now, she then shouts them, so they follow her. They go run after. David says, I want her alive, I want her alive. And James manages to shoot the horse. The horse goes down, Ellie falls off the horse, and a couple of the men sort of stand around and said, James, just kill her. He goes to do it when you hear a gunshot and it's David. He stops them killing Ellie and says he wants her to go back to the place with them. Says to them, if they want vengeance, go find Joel and kill him. Okay, so I've got my son sort of settled. He's now watching Cocomelon, so I apologise if you're going to be hearing nursery rhymes as we do this. It's going to be the weirdest Last of Us review ever. You're going to be hearing nursery rhymes in the background. So where was we up to? So Joel is basically in the house. The men are looking for him. One guy goes into the house, finds the cabinet across the door, and then he moves the thing over. Now this is quite an intense bit, because obviously he goes down into the basement. Joel's suddenly not on the bed anymore, but you can see the blood stain where he was and the blanket that he had over him. The guy goes down, and suddenly Joel comes from behind him, sticks him with a knife, and like drags him to the floor with his sort of own dead weight. They both drop to the floor. This is where I think it kind of gets a bit, it's an unrealistic show anyway, but it gets really unrealistic. The fact that these antibiotics have taken a day to take Joel from deathbed to up and killing people. And it seems like as the minutes go on, Joel gets stronger and stronger and becomes back to his sort of old self. But I did think it was a bit too quick. I remember playing the game and thinking it was a bit quicker than that, but you felt like in the game it went on for longer. You felt there was more of a time from when they sort of had that meeting with Ellie to when they actually found Joel was over a period of a few weeks. But this was over literally a day. It seems like the next day, suddenly Joel's better. Anyway, so Joel then kills him, and then we go back to Ellie, who's now in like a cage within a kitchen. And she's like in the cage, she sort of comes to a bit. She wakes up after being knocked out from falling off the horse. And David's there, and he sort of tells her that he kind of wants her to join them in a way. He then tells her, that it will join them in a way, that it will help her into their community. And she's sort of saying no, she's not really interested in it. He sort of goes on a bit more about it, then he leaves for a bit, gives her a bit of thing. We then go back to Joel, who's managed to get hold of two of the... he's killed one of them, but he's got hold of two of the men, and he's got them trapped in a room. Now, again, this is a massive feat of strength. He was on his death's doorbed earlier that morning. But he's got this guy tied to a chair. And this is where we see the Joel that we've heard about. The Joel that's killed people. The Joel that's sort of almost trying to repent by doing this thing to get Ellie to these scientists. It's his way of repenting, which is what Tess wanted him to do, is to repent for what they've done in a way. And we sort of see that nasty, sadistic side of Joel. So he gets this guy and he stabs him in the knee. And he says, like, you're going to point to where it is. He does the same thing he did with the old couple, where point to where this is on the map, and when your friend like says the same thing, you'll both be okay. But if you don't, I'm going to pop your kneecap off. And the guy's like, no, and he's crying, he's screaming, he's like, tell me. So then he puts the knife in the guy's mouth, and the guy points to where it is on the map. Joel then just stabs this guy, and he goes to the guy behind him. The second guy's got torture, and the guy's like, but why did you do that? He told you everything, and I'm not going to tell you anything now. Blah, blah, blah. And Joel says, it's all right, I believe him, and just caves this guy's head in with a lead pipe, and it is properly brutal. So then Joel now knows where Ellie is, so he's off to go rescue her. We go back to the cell again, and David's again trying to convince, well, actually no, Ellie's trying to, this is the point where Ellie's trying to escape, and you see her sort of trying to find a way, checking all the bars, she's trying to undo nuts, and as she goes over to the bar, she looks at the table where that's sort of like the meat counter table, with all the butcher equipment behind her, and she looks underneath it, and on the floor is a human ear sitting on the bottom, and then she clocks what's happened. What's his name comes in, David comes in with a bowl of food for her, goes to give it to her, and then she like kicks off, because obviously he sees what she's just seen, and she's like, you're effing eating people, like she proper like laid in on it, about how like you need to understand me. She's like, but you're eating people. He then starts going on about how he sees her as an equal. She's very similar to him. They've both got this violent heart, and how he wants her to join him to lead these people to a better life, etc. And it's a really weird sort of like what he's offering, and you kind of get a creepy feeling. And then you see what his intentions are when he puts his hand on the bar. Ellie puts her hand next to him, and he puts his hand on top of hers, sort of starts caressing it. And you realise how creepy this has become, because this is obviously like a paedophile sort of thing. And you realise that he said he was a teacher in the past. He used to struggle with his violent side, and it looks like it's more of a sexually violent side that he had, and it's just not very comfortable to watch. I think the game made it more uncomfortable, because when you're playing a game, especially a game like this, which is kind of the newer way games are done, where you feel like you're playing as that character, you sort of become almost that character, kind of avatar thing, where you become that person. It was really creepy. I think it was worse in the game for me playing it than it was watching it in a way, until what happens a bit later in this. But it was a very uncomfortable thing to watch. But then Ellie, being Ellie, just like breaks this guy's fingers. As soon as he sort of caresses, she grabs his hand, snaps his fingers. He then pulls her into the bar and breaks her nose. She goes down. And prior to this, he keeps asking her what her name is, and she won't tell him. So as she's on the floor, like her nose bleeding and broken, he storms off and says, like, yeah, oh, it's very good. Storms off and says that he's gonna chop her up into little pieces, basically, because that's what she referred to earlier, being chopped up into little pieces. So, and then as like Ellie being this defiant character that she is, she then says, Ellie, my name's Ellie, so you can tell your friends that the little girl broke your effing fingers. And it's just that such a defiant side to her, where she just like, even when she's down, she's still going to give it back to them. Fantastic, that bit. I did love that. So now we go back to Joel. He's walking through a blizzard. Again, Death's Door a couple of hours earlier. But he's now walking through this blizzard to get to Ellie, and he's found sort of the location they're at. And he goes into this shed, and he finds the horse they were riding on dead on the floor, like partially frozen, obviously, because they shot it, so they're going to use the meat for that. And he's looking around this shed, and he glimpses something behind the back of some like canoes. And when he walks around, it's dead bodies hung up that they're obviously using for meat, like human dead bodies hung up they're using for meat, or like some wrapped in like cling film, some of them just sort of like half chopped up, and it's proper gruesome. And Joel's just like, what the hell? And he sort of realises what these people are and what they're doing. He also finds Eddie's bag in that shed, so he's obviously a bit panicky. But he then goes back off out. So he's obviously searching for him. So we see Joel sort of now walking around the village. And the thing is that kind of gets me is that in the game, as Joel does this scene, as you're playing Joel, as he does this scene where he's trying to find Ellie, he's murdering pretty much everyone in that village. He's killing everyone. In this version, suddenly, everyone that lives in that village has disappeared. Like, no one else that was there before. There's a few people there. There's a good like 20 people living there. We saw in that like dining scene where they're eating the food. So there's a good 20 odd people living there, but suddenly there's no one around. There's just like the two, like the James and David you see, and then you see Joel and Ellie are in it. So there's only the four of them left in this village. I don't know where everyone else has gone. But you don't see anyone else. But yeah, back to the sort of the little girl eating the food earlier that I said I'll come back to. That to me means David knows that little girl was eating the body of her own dad, because of the way it was sort of like the meat was fresh. So if the dad had recently been killed by Joel, he would still be quite fresh. And they've obviously cut him up and fed him back to the village, which means the wife of the man and Joel and the daughter, of the man that Joel killed, are eating their own dad. And it's the way he kind of looks at her. And you mentioned about your dad's like, there's another dad now, I'm your dad. And it is really creepy. When you go back to now, you know that they were eating bodies. Was she eating her own dad? The way he looks at her when she starts to eat, I'm thinking that's just disgusting. That's wrong on every level. It's bad enough eating another human being, but to eat your own parent. Oh. So, we then go back to this cell. And David and James come bursting in. They open the cell. Ellie's trying to fight them off. Like they've got hold of Ellie. They're going to kill her. Ellie's screaming. And this girl deserves awards for what she does next in this. From here on to the end of this episode, this girl deserves all the TV awards you can get for acting, because I felt her fear. You can feel her panic, her screams. it is horrific. But this girl, she's nailing it. She's only young as well. I don't actually know how old she actually is, but I know she's young. But she's doing wonders in this, because they grab her, and the fear in her as she's screaming, trying to go, oh, please, please stop, don't do it. And they're grabbing, they're trying her down, and David grabs a meat cleaver, and he's just like that. And as she goes to kill her with his meat cleaver, she then screams, I'm infected, and so are you now, because she in the tussle she's bit David. He's like, no, you're not. And then she says, pull the sleeve up, and obviously you can still see Ellie's scars from her bite that she obviously hasn't been killed by, because she didn't get her. And the guy, and James sees it instantly, and instantly knows what it is. He's like, oh my god, like, it's a real infection. And David's like, no, but it looks different. It looks, because obviously it's healed. And she hasn't turned. But the guy, and as they're discussing this with each other, it gives Ellie that chance to grab the cleaver off David, and she sticks James straight in the neck with it. And he just starts to bleed out, drops to the floor, bleeds out, and dies. Ellie then manages to get away from David and runs into the bar area. Now this is the bit when I played the game that I died so many times, and I was so tensely playing this game. I was so into it. I was like shaking with the controls, like trying to get. It was such an intense part of the game, because in the game, you're as it is in the show, you are being stalked around the bar by David, and you're trying to hide at different locations as he's coming. And he keeps, when you play the game, he keeps bloody finding you, and he keeps killing you, and it's horrible. So, again, as we got to this scene, I was already on edge because of playing the game, but I became more on edge because of the way they're portraying this. So Ellie's got this bit of wood from the fire that's still burning away, and she's sort of going to hold it as like a weapon. David walks in with a meat cleaver still, and he's trying to look for her, and he's talking about how he still wants her to join it, like how he still wants her, but now he wants to get her and keep her and teach her, and it's getting more and more creepy the way it sounds, as it's like a very paedophilic thing. Now it's becoming like, this is wrong. Ellie's throws this lump of wood towards him that lands on the curtains and starts a fire, so the bar starts to go up in flames. So this fire starts to spread quite quickly as well. Oh no, what have you done now? Oh, I'm sorry about the stop-start, because we're in an intense bit now, and this is when he decides to kick off. Right, so running around the bar, panicking, like, as I said, when I played the game, I was panicking at this point. But yeah, so she throws the thing into the curtains. The curtains go up. The bar starts to catch on fire really quickly. We've still got David walking around talking as he's trying to find her, telling her that he's going to keep her now and teach her. He's not going to kill her anymore. He's going to keep her and teach her. And it's horrible. So then Ellie manages to find a knife in the drawer, one of the drawers, as she's sort of trying to hide from him. She finds a knife in a drawer. She then goes to stick David, and she gets him straight in the side. He's like, yes. And as they sort of have a tussle, she falls over and sort of hits her head on the floor and falls down. And she's kind of a bit dazed, and David's like, gets the knife out, and he's like, ouch, like holding himself. He then goes to grab Ellie. Now, Ellie has seen under the table, just in front of her, is the meat cleaver. And she starts to crawl to it, and then David sort of gets on top of her. And this is the most horrific thing to watch. I've got daughters. It just makes my skin crawl that people like this in the world. He then spins her over, says, have you not worked it out yet? He loved the violent side of it, and he starts to reach down for his belt to under his trousers, and you realise what's about to happen, and Ellie's reaction is horrible. This is why I said this girl needs awards to go through this as an actress, to do this and then portray it the way she's doing it. This girl is stellar. I swear to God, this girl is amazing. Her acting skills are just off the chart. The fact that I'm now invested in the TV, proper edge of my seat, panicking for this girl, wanting to jump into the screen to save this girl, is just it's just fantastic. But the guy that plays David as well deserves some sort of award, because he's obviously having to do this as an actor and do these things, and it must be uncomfortable for him as well, and he's portraying it so nasty that you just want to kill this guy. I physically wanted to jump in that screen and just kill him myself and save that girl. But you're sitting there watching it, and Ellie sort of he's on top of her, and Ellie manages to grab the meat cleaver, and she just gets him with the meat cleaver, and then she just goes sick. She just unleashes onto him, just goes over and over, hitting him with his meat cleaver. God knows what he would have looked like afterwards, but all you see is the blood come out. She's screaming and crying and screaming and crying as she's doing it. And then she sort of stops, and then we see her sort of like walking outside the place. So then she sort of bursts through the doors of the place out into the snow. She's just got a jumper on. She's covered in blood, and she's walking. Suddenly, someone grabs her from behind, and she just starts like panic screaming, just hysterically screaming like "Help me, help me, help me!" And it's Joel, and he's like, "Calm down, calm down. I've got you, I've got you." And he holds her, and he turns and says, "Come here, baby girl." And it's so sweet. And he's like, "Come here, baby girl," and he holds her, and they just embrace. With this like moment, they just embrace. And she just sort of calms, but sort of cries, and he just holds her. And then they start to walk off together. And that's when the episode ends. And he's just like, we've now seen the full, he's now become her father in every way he could be. He's like become that father figure. But it's more of a closeness now that they are literally almost father and daughter now. And in fact, he's like, "Come here, baby girl." It kind of got me emotional. I'm getting emotional now thinking about it. I really am. And it's just such a nice thing that he's got hold of her and he sort of walks her away and the episode ends. And it was a hard one to watch. I knew this was going to be a hard one to watch. I knew that ending part of that episode was going to be very hard to watch because playing the game was hard, but you can kind of disconnect from animated characters. But when you see like human characters, it's kind of worse. I do think this show deserves awards now. Like it is, when this show first started, it was hard to differentiate from the game, like because you were comparing it so much to the game. But this scene I did compare a bit to the game because it was a part of the game which I thought was probably the first time playing a game I became so into it that I sort of stepped away from it on playing a game, that I was so into it, I was focused on the thing so much. So I kind of wanted to mention the game part and how it made me feel at the time. But this bit here, like the him getting her on the floor and the sort of the attempted rape part of it and the girl playing it, there was so much more in that scene there, so much in it that I blocked off that I was watching a TV show and I literally wanted to jump through the screen and kill that guy for her and save her. It was just horrible. Don't push the button. So this show has got better and better and better. I know there's a lot of controversy with the show. I mentioned it in the last one about people saying it could be woke and all that. After watching this one, none of that stuff matters because this was gripping. This was gripping television. This was the television sort of like, I paid my $6.99 a month on a special offer to get Now TV to watch this show. That episode made it worth it because it got my emotions from like fear, anxiety, tears. The show has done everything for me. It's got me in all these emotions, and if a show can make you do that, it's working. If you watch a TV show and don't care about the characters and you don't care if they live or die, then it's not worth the money you pay for it. But I've paid money to watch this show and it's actually turned out to be worth it. Try to be all serious here, and he's like this on my back. So yeah, definitely worth the money I've paid for it. And we've got one more episode to go, and this last episode is gonna be insane. It's gonna be a tearjerker by the end of it. I know what happens. I know what's coming. I just want to know how they play it out in the show, and I'm hoping it is similar to the game. But the way I see it is the game was good story, but the show has put pure emotion into this, and it is phenomenal work that the show's creators and the cast and crew, everyone has done to this show to put more emotion into an already emotional game. Games won't tend to be emotional. You play games, you enjoy them, you get adrenaline rush, all that. This was the first game I'd ever played that gave me emotion. There was a couple of games that came out around the same time. You had this one, a game called Heavy Rain, and there was another one that was called Two Souls that wasn't as good. But yeah, Heavy Rain was kind of the thing before this, and it was a very different style. It was like playing a movie, that one. And then there was this one, where games actually started to give emotion to them. But this show has like tripled the emotion that you feel. So phenomenal job. Can't wait till next week. Obviously, we know the last one's coming, and I've got a child on my head acting like a monkey right now. Look at you, look. We're supposed to be getting serious here. Donut. So yeah, if I don't get choked out now. Next week, last one, so that'll be the last one we do these. Obviously, I'm doing more things. Hopefully, I'm going to watch Scream 6 this week, so there might be a little Scream 6 review coming. But anyway, have a good night, guys, and I'll see you all soon. And if you've got the little bit of now melting snow like I have, yeah, anyway, so say goodbye again. Bye. Bye, guys. See you soon. Hope you enjoy next week's show too. Bye.